account of what is happening in Skudit. Jalpa tells him the city has fallen. Jalpa walks through everything that happened, but there is one part Aprita cannot make sense of. If things were as bad as Jalpa is describing, how did any of them survive? Jalpa tells him that the wyverns simply stopped attacking and pulled away on their own. Nobody could explain it. Dino connects the pieces immediately. That was Van. He tells Jalpa and Mersha that they may not have heard yet, but Van has turned that remote village he was sent to into something far beyond what anyone expected. He defeated a dragon and earned himself a formal title. All at his age, Jalpa stares at him. He genuinely cannot believe what he is hearing. Van does not even have elemental magic. Dino glances down and notices Mersha's fist is clenched tight at his side. He assumes it is jealousy. His younger brother earned a title before him, but then Mersha's face crumbles and tears start running down his face. He is not angry. He tells them all how proud he is of Van. That night, Van and his crew sit around a fire at camp. Van tells them that even though they have fulfilled their immediate duty as nobles, they are still allies of Skudit and need to find a way to keep supporting them. Art stares into the fire and admits that this is the first time she has ever been close to something like a real war. It frightened her, and she does not want to experience anything like it again. Van looks at her and hates seeing her like that. He tells her he has an idea. He is going to build a catapult. They will send it to the battlefield as their form of continued support, which means nobody here has to fight on the front lines again. Art will not have to be afraid anymore. Van gets to work on the spot, using his production magic to begin building. He runs into a problem almost immediately. The catapults are far too large to be transported from where they are now. He will have to build them directly on site instead. As they begin their journey, Van feels quite down. He knows he has to deliver this weapon to the fortress of Skudit, but that also means they will all have to enter the battlefield. Thinking about this makes him feel anxious and uneasy. After some time, they arrive at the city closest to Skudit. At first, Van is surprised because the city looks completely normal, just like any other place. However, as he looks around more carefully, he notices that there are a lot of soldiers stationed there. It turns out that after the Skuderians were defeated, their army used that defeat as a reason to reorganize their forces. Because of that, many troops have been gathered in this city. Just then, the soldiers suddenly line up in formation. Standing before Van is his father, Lord Jalpa, who says it has been a long time since they last met. Lord Jalpa tells Van that he is aware of everything Van has accomplished so far, including becoming a baron and defeating a forest dragon. However, what interests him the most is the forest dragon and how Van managed to defeat it. He explains that even with all his strength and experience, he would not be able to come close to defeating a forest dragon. Because of this, he wants to know exactly how Van was able to do it. Van calmly explains that all he used were some ballistae. When the soldiers hear this, they immediately react and say that it is impossible. They argue that there is no way simple ballistae could defeat a forest dragon. At that point, Van realizes there is no use trying to explain any further. Even if he tells the complete truth, they will not believe him anyway. Just then, Panamera walks in and tells Van that Dino has been eagerly waiting for him. Dino wants to see if Van has managed to come up with something impressive or useful. Hearing this, Van tells his father that he will show him the ballistae and explain how it works after he finishes speaking with King Dino. He believes that once his father sees it for himself, it will be easier to understand and more believable. Lord Jalpa remains silent after hearing this, not knowing what to expect. Shortly after, the three of them arrive at the entrance to Dino's building. The moment Panamera mentions that she is here with Van, the guards immediately clear the path and allow them to enter without any delay. Once they get inside, they hold a meeting with Dino and several other high-ranking nobles. Dino begins by explaining their plan going forward. He says they will gather Scuderia's elite forces and retake the fortress city of Skudit. After saying this, he asks if anyone has any objections. The room goes completely silent. During this silence, Van looks over at Count Ferdinando, Art's father, and notices that he has a gloomy expression on his face. Dino then gives Aprita the chance to explain what they should be careful about in the upcoming battle. Aprita explains that Yeleneda's army has attacked Skudit many times in the past, but always failed. However, this time, they captured it very quickly. He says the main reason for this seems to be their wyverns and some strange black balls they use. Van is confused by what he means by black balls, so he assumes they must be some kind of new weapon. Dino understands that this means they cannot win unless they find a way to deal with those threats. Aprita agrees. He explains that their enemies use wyverns to attack from above, which makes it hard to fight back, and taking them down will not be easy. Hearing this, Count Ferdinando remembers how those same black balls were used to attack their soldiers. Just thinking about it reminds Jalpa of that moment, and he feels shaken, remembering how those black balls wiped out almost all of his men. Aperta then turns to Van and asks him, as a baron, if he has come up with any solution to this problem. Van stands up and calmly says that all they need to do is take down the wyverns before they can use those black balls. The other nobles hear this and laugh at him. They think his idea is too simple and childish. Dino, however, thinks about it seriously. For some reason, he believes Van might actually be able to do it. He then asks Van if he is willing to fight on the front lines in the battle to retake Skudit. Van immediately says he has no intention of going to the front lines. Everyone in the room is shocked. They cannot believe he just spoke like that to the king of Scuderia. Dino is confused and asks why Van refuses, especially since he could gain a lot of honor and glory. Van simply replies that he does not want to get hurt. The other nobles are stunned and think he is being extremely selfish. At that moment, Jalpa scolds Van. He tells him he is being disrespectful and reminds him that he is only the lord of a small, remote village. Van calmly says that he understands. However, he points out that none of them, even though they are high-ranking nobles, truly understand what it means to protect a small village with everything they have. Dino then tells Jalpa to sit down and allows Van to continue speaking. Van begins by explaining that he was made the lord of a remote village that could easily be destroyed, and despite that, he did not receive any support or help from his own family. Even so, Van explains that he has managed to develop his village to a strong level. Because of that, he worries that if Yeleneta attacks while he is away, they might actually have a chance of winning against his people. One of the counts questions this. He wonders if Yeleneta would even bother attacking such a small village. Aperta responds that they already have. He says Yeleneta sent a reconnaissance force to that area before. Aperta explains that Yeleneta is serious about crushing them this time. Because of that, they will likely try to conquer all nearby domains along their borders, including small villages like Van's. Hearing this, Van makes his position clear. He says his priority is to protect the village he and his people built together. Because of that, he cannot afford to risk getting injured in battle. Count Ferdinando understands Van's reasoning. However, he still doubts that Van alone can counter Yeleneta's forces, especially since they have wyverns and those black ball weapons. Van then assures Dino that even if he does not fight on the front lines, he will support them in another way. He says he will provide high-quality weapons and equipment that will greatly increase their chances of winning. King Dino is pleased to hear this. Despite this, Jalpa still does not believe Van can prepare enough weapons in time before Yeleneta's forces arrive. Van calmly tells his father to trust him, saying he has everything under control. To prove it, they go outside and Van uses his production magic right in front of everyone. He quickly creates a new model of a ballista and a catapult. The nobles are surprised at how fast he is able to do it. However, Jalpa is not impressed at all. He believes it is just for show and not actually useful in battle. Without saying much more, he turns and walks away, saying he will focus on reorganizing his army. After Jalpa leaves, Van explains the weapon to the others. He says it is a catapult that fires unique shuriken design to take down wyverns. He admits there is no absolute guarantee, but he believes this is their best chance to defeat the enemy, unless the enemy does something completely unexpected. Van is confident that this plan should lead them to victory. Dino listens to everything and agrees with the plan. He dismisses the other lords and tells them to go organize their armies. Soon after, Till walks over to Van and praises him for the work he has done today. She says she is here to pick him up and informs him that Art is also there. Art then steps out from behind. She runs into her father, Count Ferdinando, who is surprised to see her. Art asks him if her mother doing well. Count Ferdinando tells her she's doing okay, but the moment feels awkward. After a short talk, Ferdinando says he is busy preparing for war and suggests they speak properly later when things settle down. Art agrees, though she still looks uneasy. Van quickly checks on Art and notices she is not doing well. He tells Till to stay with her and make sure she is okay. After that, Van returns to his village. He gathers his team and prepares them for the coming battle. Panamera smirks and says the time for the final battle has finally come. She adds that the era where battles were decided only by powerful mages is over, and it is all thanks to Van. Not long after, the battle to retake Skudit begins. The soldiers charge forward with determination. determination. Van reminds everyone that their main goal is to take down the wyverns. He says that is the key to winning. The army splits into groups and advances toward different parts of the Yeleneta defenses. Meanwhile, the captain of the Yeleneta army watches them and thinks their attack is foolish. He believes it makes no sense to charge like that when they know about the wyverns. The Yeleneta forces fire a wave of arrows. However, the Scuderian soldiers raise their shields and block every single one. The captain is shocked by this. Van watches and feels satisfied. He knows those shields were quickly made from wooden blocks, yet they are performing well. Next, the mages of Yeleneta launch a barrage of magic attacks. In response, the Scuderian soldiers raise special shields that block the magic for a while. After taking repeated hits, the soldiers realize the shields will not hold much longer. They turn to D and wait for orders. The Yeleneta captain grows more confident. He believes no one can stop their army. Suddenly, an attack hits their north gate. The captain is confused and looks over, only to see a separate Scuderian force attacking the gate with powerful elemental magic. He is shocked and realizes this must have been planned from the start. Van sees this and is pleased that the enemy fell for their strategy. Jalpa and Ferdinando then combine their strength and launch a powerful attack that finally breaks the north gate. Seeing this, Van realizes just how strong his father and the Count truly are. With the gate destroyed, the Scuderian army pushes inside. However, they soon notice that Yeleneta's forces are stronger than expected. They begin to get overwhelmed and outnumbered. At that moment, Panamera appears and unleashes a powerful attack. This gives the Scuderian army a chance to recover and push back, shifting the battle in their favor. Jalpa is surprised to see that such strong fighters are actually under Van's command. At the same time, the Yeleneta captain is stunned. He never expected things to turn out like this. Realizing the situation, he orders one of his soldiers to send the signal for the wyverns to join the battle. The wyverns fly down from the sky and prepare to drop their explosive black balls. At that moment, Van gives a signal to Kamzan. Kamzan immediately orders the new catapults to fire. The catapults launch special projectiles that release spinning shuriken. These strike the wyverns and knock them out of the sky. Van is pleased because everything is going exactly as planned. At first, the soldiers think the battle is already won, but then a giant wyvern appears from the smoke and lets out a loud roar. Ortho and his team quickly rush toward it. They attack and try to pin it down with their swords, but they are not strong enough to stop it completely. This gives Kamzan enough time to prepare another ballista attack. The shot lands directly on the wyvern and deals heavy damage. Panamera follows up with a powerful magic attack. Then D steps in and delivers the final blow. The giant wyvern crashes to the ground. Seeing this, the soldiers cheer. They realize they have won the war. Jalpa stands quietly, unable to speak. He never expected his son to become this capable. The Yeleneta captain is shocked and understands they have lost. He considers running away, but Kuzala and Ortho reach him in time and stop him. By sunset, the battle is over and the troops begin to prepare to leave. Mersha asks Jalpa if it is okay to leave without seeing Van. Jalpa looks back and admits that he may have been wrong about his son. Meanwhile, D acknowledges the victory and praises Van, saying all the credit belongs to him. Van disagrees. He says he only gave orders from the rear and that the victory was made possible by everyone else's efforts. Soon after, Ortho and Kuzala arrive, bringing the Yeleneta commander as a prisoner. They believe he has valuable information. Panamera steps forward and questions him. She demands to know his true objective. After interrogation, Panamera learns that Yeleneta's plan was a three-pronged attack. Ceto and Scudit were only part of it. The final target is the Ferdinando territory, which is Art's homeland. Art looks Van in the eyes and asks him to let her go there on her own. Van says he is going to come along with her, but Art stops him, telling him that she cannot keep relying on his help for everything. On top of that, she tells him that this is a family matter and something she has to deal with herself. Van looks at Art with surprise because he has never seen her this firm about anything before. After Van thinks it over for a moment, he figures it out, since he is just the lord of a small remote village. If the Ferdinando County ended up being being saved by such a small village, Van is certain that it would hurt his standing and might even cost him his land. With that in mind, Van asks if he can at least act as an escort for Art to make sure she stays safe, and Art agrees. Ortho and his group then also speak up, saying that they will also help out as escorts because they have so much respect for Van and are willing to do whatever they can. Besides, adventurers like them stepping in is not going to cause any problems. Van agrees and tells them to do everything they can to keep Art safe. Shortly after, Art arrives at her hometown and sees the wyverns dropping black bombs that are tearing the city apart. Art cries out and immediately runs toward it, her mind going straight to her mother. But that is when Ortho pulls her back and tells her that if they join the battle right now, they might still have a chance to turn things around. However, Art tells Ortho and his fellow adventurers that they cannot fight because it has to be someone from the House Ferdinando that drives the Yeleneta kingdom out. Meanwhile, the Empress of the House Ferdinando, Sharon, watches from her window alongside her daughter, the princess, as the Yeleneta kingdom tears through their land below. She turns to her daughter and tells her not to worry, because no matter what happens, she is going to make it look like she took her own life for the sake of future generations. Future generations have to believe that the eldest princess went out cleanly, without any regrets. As she says all of this, the princess just stares at her with nothing but fear in her eyes. Sharon looks into them, and they begin to remind her of Art. Meanwhile, the soldiers of the Yeleneta army are getting ready to push into the Ferdinando County, fully confident that they are going to come out on top. But just before they charge in, they notice that one of the wyverns has gone down. They are confused about how that happened, but that is when they spot a silver knight cutting through all the wyverns in an instant. However, the silver knight is actually being controlled by Art through her marionette magic. They look up toward the hill and see the Ferdinando County's flag along with a line of troops, and they figure those must be reinforcements coming in. With that, they decide to charge straight at them. Ortho and the others realize that the Yeleneta army is heading right for them first, so they get ready for the fight. Meanwhile, Art is still trying to calm her nerves because this is her first time stepping into a war. She knows it is not going to be anywhere near as easy as Van makes it look, but she is just going to have to give everything she has. She suddenly finds her courage and steps out in front of all the adventurers, asking them to lend her their strength and help her save her hometown. Ortho asks Art what she plans on doing, and she immediately replies saying she is heading to the front line. She keeps control of the Silver Knight through her magic and uses it to wipe out yet another wave of Yeleneta soldiers. Ortho and the other adventurers join in as well and do a solid job of taking down a few themselves without even breaking a sweat. Kuzala gets outnumbered at one point, but the Silver Knight steps in to save him, though she takes a hit to the left arm in the process. After a bit more fighting, they successfully take out all the Yeleneta soldiers and everyone thinks the job is done. But that is when Pluriel reminds them that they still have to deal with the wyverns up in the sky. The sheer number of wyverns above them is what catches them off guard the most, as there appear to be over 50 of them. The captain of the Yeleneta army orders them all to go after the Silver Knight. Just as they dive down to attack, the Silver Knight does well to bring down a couple of them in a single blow each. She gets outnumbered at a certain point and is about to take a hit she cannot dodge, but that is when a second one of Art's marionettes comes in to pull her out of it, which stuns everyone around her because none of them had any idea she could control two at the same time. Art knows that controlling two at once is going to burn through her mana fast, so she is going to have to wrap things up quickly. Several wyverns rush in to attack both marionettes at once, and the captain of the Yeleneta army thinks it is all over. But Art digs deep and pulls out her true power, leading both marionettes into a coordinated strike that cuts down half of the wyverns in a single slash. As this happens, Art's mind drifts back to her childhood, and she thinks about how she always felt like a failure because she had an aptitude for marionette magic, a skill that was seen as something shameful and unacceptable for a noble to possess. But she believes that meeting Van was one of the greatest things that ever happened to her, because he gave her the confidence to fully embrace her magic and grow even stronger with it. The purple marionette delivers a heavy blow to the last wyvern and knocks it to the ground. The soldiers of Yeleneta quickly realize they are nothing without their wyverns, so they begin to retreat in a hurry, while the adventurers celebrate their victory. Meanwhile, inside the palace, Sharon wonders what could have possibly saved them from the soldiers and the wyverns, but then Count Ferdinando walks in and explains that all the wyverns were defeated by two marionettes controlled by Art, the very daughter daughter they once banished for having marionette magic. The Count points out the irony of the situation and how badly they treated her. Sharon also understands this and breaks down in tears, filled with regret. Outside, the adventurers encourage Art to go and meet her parents, saying they will surely accept her now since she used her magic to save them. However, Art is not convinced, especially because her parents always hated her magic. Instead, she suggests that they return home because Van is waiting for them. When they arrive back in Van's town, Art is warmly welcomed by everyone. Van praises her for saving her hometown, but Art does not feel proud of herself because she thinks she was not confident enough when giving orders like he usually is. Van tells her not to worry about that and says she should just be herself instead of trying to act like someone else. He looks at her and tells her she did a great job and welcomes her back home. Art smiles with tears in her eyes and says she is happy to be back. After that, Van tells Art that while she was away, he built inns and new shops around the town, so he takes her on a tour. As they walk around, Van thinks about how he was worried at first about living in this village, but now he is certain he made the right choice. Even though the village has people from different races, personalities, and species, they all somehow manage to live together peacefully, which makes him happy. Later, they hold a barbecue to celebrate Art's victory, and everyone enjoys themselves. During this time, Van remembers how his father forced him out of the Empire because he had talent for production magic, which led him to become the lord of a small and undeveloped village. However, because of that, he was able to discover a new life filled with fun, reliable, and interesting friends. Together with them, he developed the village and won many battles, and for that, he feels grateful. Suddenly, Esparta interrupts and reminds Van that it is time for studying, but Dee also steps in and says it is time for sword training because this is the era of swordsmanship. Van does not want to do either of those things because he only wants a peaceful life, so he quietly slips away and runs off. As he runs, he thinks again about everything the village has gone through and achieved. These memories give him a rush, so he turns around and says he will keep moving forward at his own pace to make this place an even more enjoyable home for everyone. This was the end. Subscribe to not miss more recaps and watch the next video.